Well, and we're live. Hello, everyone. We're a little bit different. We're on a different channel. I've been doing this thing on my channel before, but like now we're not on my channel, which is great. So, hi, I'm Nicholas W. Fuller. If you haven't seen me before, I am joined tonight by a bunch of lovely authors and 2 books being released. So, why don't we go do a little round robin? We'll do Isaac, Josh, Kaden, Rob. You guys introduce yourselves and say hi real quick, okay?
All right. So I'm Isaac Hill, author of the Sunborn series, and I am just here to celebrate 2 of my other favorite authors, Josh and Kaden, as they release their books.
Yeah.
Woo!
Boom. Here we go.
Yeah, that one.
Gotta rep Isaac's book. I love it.
Oh, hold on.
Yep. Go get your book.
Yeah, we're good. Yeah. I'm Josh Walker. I'm the author of these 2 books, Rest of the Gods and An Exile of Water and Gold. And my new book is The Child of the Greenwood, and it comes out on Tuesday. And I don't have the cover art here to show you, but I'm pretty sure it's on the thumbnail. So
Nice. Very cool.
I had to grab the physicals too. That's what I went to.
That's we gotta show it off, man.
Kaden Love, the author of Paladins of the Harvest series, which includes Beastcall, the novella, Elegy of a Fragmented Vineyard. And on Wednesday, I will also be the author of the published Duet of Pernicious Eeels.
Nice.
And it's a chunker too.
Yeah, it's like 250 pages longer than the others, and
oh my god,
like, I just love it.
You just added a book to your book. I see.
Exactly.
All right.
Cool. Hi everyone, I'm Rob Leigh. I am the author of Pathlighter and Performances of a Death Metal Bard. I'm here to support these 2 new awesome books that are being released. Oh, thank you, Josh.
Oh, right.
I come prepared.
I'm a little unprepared. I want there we go. Excuse me. I want to as we're making our rounds, I want to shout out Rob and Pathlighter and shout out the buddy read that we got going on the SFF Insiders Discord group. So that just started today, which is a great excuse for you all to go grab Pathlighter with this beautiful Felix Ortiz cover art and join me and a bunch of other wonderful nerds on that buddy read.
That's right. Join the party.
Join the party. And I appreciate you guys in the chat saying what a bunch of neat fellows, and but not one, but 2 new Breaking books. Pretty amazing. It's freaking banging. There we go. Is that really a spoiler?
Thank you, Aaron.
Yeah, love it.
It's a great book.
Awesome. So, yeah, I mean, I don't even know where to start. Should we, I guess maybe Kaden, you want to talk about your upcoming book just a little bit and tell us when we can expect it and all that fun stuff?
So, yes, I am currently running a Kickstarter that ends on the same day as the release day. So on release day, it will be available on Amazon in print and paperback, unless Amazon decides to screw me over for some random reason. Other than that, I will send out all the ebooks because I won't have it on Kindle Unlimited right away. I'll send out all the ebooks to the backers, and then I'll ship them like right away. And people that go through there are able to get Voln is one of my favorite characters that I've created, and I'm doing a little pin of him. So that is the place you get that. There's some stickers. But yeah, this is the sequel to my organ harvesting epic fantasy series. As you can see, it's a lot longer than the other, and I'm really excited for people to read it because I think it's a lot better. And I have just been really happy to see some great reactions. And yeah, as of today, I have like 107 pages written of the 3rd book. So I'm just grinding away. Yeah.
That's amazing. So can we pause for a second?
Yes.
Is there a tie-in here with the Boston Marathon? Is this the same thing I'm thinking of? Because I seem to remember a guy running the Boston Marathon, and then continuing to write his book directly after he ran Boston. And hey, might be a different guy I'm thinking of.
I think that was actually me. I don't know exactly where I was writing it, but I was very tired. I ran it. We walked around the city for a little bit. I got home and just started writing again. And yeah, so
No
That-
rest for
that
you or
was-
your characters.
yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah, what a boss. I feel like you're a little Energizer bunny, man. Like, just you keep
Yeah,
going and going.
I'm kind of a freak and oh, what's it?
Interesting.
But yeah, I just really I like writing, and it's obsessive where I just feel like trash if I don't do it. The same as I just have to, even if
Have you always been that, like, were you like a little 6-year-old nerd feeling the same way, Kaden? When did the writing obsession start?
Honestly, it didn't really start until I was in college. I've always been a big reader, and I just really felt passionate and inspired to go this route and have given it all of my spare time. And so always reading, writing, or marketing, if you want to call it.
Sure.
And yeah.
Nice. Cool. So I'm thinking, tell me, Kaden, Josh, this is like your night. But I'm thinking maybe we can kind of go back between the two of you, back and forth a
Yeah,
little
sure.
bit. Cool.
Mhm.
And I just dropped the link for Caden's Kickstarter into the chat. So guys that are watching, jump on that.
Yes, get on
I
it.
think you put it in the private chat. I'll put it in the.
No, I think I've
Mm.
dropped it on I've got the
gotcha.
actual yeah. But
okay.
Cool. So yeah, Josh, what about your book? Tell us a little bit. When's it coming out?
Yeah, so it drops on Tuesday. It's my second novella in the series, so I'm trying to kind of tell everyone that this is really an alternative entry point to the series. So there's never been a better time to jump in. You can start here. You can start with the other two books that are out, and you can read them in any order. And this one's actually it's a pretty interesting book, like from a writing history standpoint, because I actually wrote a lot of the things in this book in a completely different book that wasn't related to this series at all, like a few years ago, and that book didn't work. And then I pulled a lot of the stuff that was in here into the current setting of the Song of the Sleepers. So it was really fun to write. It was really seamless to write, and I do feel like it's pretty strong. So I'm excited to see what people think. But the way I've been kind of pitching it is like Tarzan meets Indiana Jones meets Die Hard meets what were the other ones I had? Oh, Mistborn. Yeah. So yeah, it's a flavor bomb.
Mhm.
You did like plus weasels.
Plus weasels. Plus weasels.
Everybody loves the weasels.
I can't get enough of the weasels. Like
It's Weezing
from
time.
day one last winter, my first beta read for Rest of the Gods. I cannot get enough of them with their little hands and their weapons and their just can't get enough.
Yeah.
There'll be more of them. I think the funny thing about the weasels is, and that's kind of come from my love of Redwall as a kid. But I've had so many people say, "When are plushies coming?" One day we'll do plushies. One day.
Nice.
But yeah, and also like tacking on to what Kaden was saying before, it might be kind of cool to talk about this a bit, but that kind of like compulsion to write is what took over me with this novella too. So for the most part, I punched this thing out in like 3 weeks, which is the same thing that happened to me when I wrote the first novella. I don't know what it is about having like a really tight character focus, but something to do with that and the shorter word count, I think just like helps me kind of like, power through. Whereas with the bigger books, they take a lot longer. So, but yeah, I've had that compulsion since I was 6 years old. So,
Yeah.
and it's the same kind of weird, guilt feeling you get if you don't sit down and punch out some words every night. Completely self-reinforced. I don't know where it comes from, but
yeah, it's not
pretty
like your
funny.
parents were making you sit and write.
No, not at all. Yeah, so
I did know a dude that
You're
like
assigning
his
yourself
parents.
homework.
Yeah,
that's
I'm gonna bully myself if I don't do it.
Right.
that's right.
I knew a dude whose parents would make him practice guitar when he was little. And like when he was really little, he was like, "Oh, I don't want to." But like by the time it was in high school, the dude could totally shred, and it was like he's like, "Yeah, it's worth it," you know.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
That actually happened with me in guitar as well as a kid. And I remember there was a
Yeah.
point where I kind of got away from my parents telling me to do it, and it became my thing. And
Yeah.
and then I remember one day I was playing so much one night, just like I was so into it, and then I started bleeding like all over the top of my guitar, like I just carved my fingers to pieces. And then I went to my music lesson the next day, and my teacher was like, "Dude, like the only other person who I've heard of that's done that is Paul McCartney. So you've made it now." and then he was like, "That's it, lesson over, go home,
Yeah.
Band-Aids on." So
That's metal.
I think there's something to be said about, yeah, that's right. But also like taking that general kind of enthusiasm for whatever it is you're passionate about. And sometimes it's good to take things too far,
Well, yeah, I just like you're saying, it's nice to have a light at the end of the tunnel. Whereas, like, you're working on a big long book, you aren't expecting to see that until months later.
Yeah.
Where, I love novellas. Even if you do it in a world that you have made, it's a chance to go and do something really weird or fun or explore a character that doesn't receive as much attention. And like you were saying, 3 weeks, people are talking about there. NaNoWriMo, like the novella in a month was a big thing. And I really want to try sometime, even if it's just me that does it, a novella in a week. Like get a good week where there's a ton of free time and just sit down and grind it out. And yeah, I love just like having those tight character stories, but it definitely has to come from that inspiration, like you were saying.
Yeah.
But when you've got that feeling like, oh, I got to get this out.
And also I think it's like, it makes you, it gives you a sense of accomplishment that with a longer book, it's really hard sometimes to derive that sense of accomplishment out of when you're kind of just grinding through chapter by chapter. Like all of us know what that's like. And like Rob, like you're working on your book too at the moment. And I think you've kind of had, from what you've said, some of those kind of, bumps in the road as you go, which is completely normal.
Yeah, quite a bit.
Yeah.
But we're getting there.
Yeah.
Light at the end of the tunnel, like Kaden said.
Yeah, that's right. But I guess with a shorter form, you get that sense of accomplishment, and then in some ways it's like good motivation for me to jump back in and start writing the bigger thing. So
well, and I think for readers too, it is the perfect thing, because especially if you look at just bigger long series. I mean, we always talk about Ryan Cahill, but what he's done is exactly. You have these big long books, but if you still want to read something in the world and stay comfortable, you can go for something much smaller. So like, if I am loving a series and I just read the first book, but I need something shorter and I know the next one is much longer, I want something shorter every now and then. Like I'm going through Malazan right now. I'm going to need to go through something short. And a lot of times I love just having ebooks on my phone of novellas, because it's just like, spare time at work, just fly through a couple pages and you go through it.
And that's another great thing about novellas, I think, especially in the indie scene, like the way that people market them often is as a reader magnet. So you literally can just like go get it, usually for cheap or for free, and chuck it on your phone, and you've just got something there. I've done that so many times with people's books. So I actually just finished reading, I should shout this out, I just finished reading a novella this last week, and it's by another Aussie author. His name's S.K. Putt, and A Reckless Courage. This is fantastic. If you're like a John Gwynne fan, or if you like, I don't know, God of War, like stuff like that, this is just so good, man. And super short. I read it in a day. Brutal, emotional. So I think that's one of the perks of writing short form, is that you can just pack an absolute punch. But now we should probably divert and talk about doing the complete opposite thing with like 300,000 words or whatever it is, Kaden.
Yeah. And I guess
that book?
So this one is 189,000. And the funny thing is the Elegy was like 220,000, I think, at the beginning. It's 113,000. Like that was so early on. And I definitely, like, by the end, when I got that final product, I'm like, okay, I know how to write a book now. And so when I got to this one, you know, of course, there were little things that got chopped out here and there, but it was like like it was pretty much the same thing. And whereas like Sarah, Josh's wonderful editor as well, she is so amazing with me in Elegy, very patient because it went through so many changes. The only developmental change she made or suggested with Duet was to add a chapter. So if people have read it or when they do, the chapter called Evolution is only there because Sarah wanted to see that perspective. And the cool thing is that one of the 2 illustrations, unless we reach 5K on the Kickstarter, there's an illustration about halfway through that Seema, my wife, did, and it is of the final scene of that chapter. And so it's pretty cool. And yeah, like on the most carnal man level, I like having a big object that I wrote. Like it is just, it was so cool to look at when I got here. I'm just like, oh yeah. And you just fly through it and like all these just came from my mind. And it gives you really a good sense of accomplishment. You know, reviews and everything are nice, but like when you have that first physical copy, it's just, that is when you actually feel like you've done something big.
Yeah. The flop too. The flop.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you need the flop.
Yeah.
Nice.
I started using the random cover generator on Amazon and just buying like my third drafts. I've been like purchasing copies just to hold it so I could go.
That
right,
is so good.
I've seen another Erica Everin. If you guys are probably aware of her, but yeah, she like her last proof. She gets, you know, a proof copy and like goes through and actually like does her own proofread with the Amazon copy. I'm like, why have I never thought about that? Why have I only thought about those as like just to make sure that it's correct? You know?
Yeah.
Way more fun to
Yeah.
go look at it.
Oh, absolutely. And I think also like it means you can kind of look at the words in the way that the reader looks at the words, right? So you have that like sense of formatting and design and stuff, which can help you spot things as well. So that's definitely something I want to try. I think Brian Wilson does that as well, actually. Another one to break in. So yeah.
Also gives you like a nice little like collector's item almost.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
That's just for you and you alone. Yeah.
Right.
What is interesting, like this time, I just barely ordered like last week I got the first KDP proof of it, but the first ones that I got were the Ingram ones, where it's like I don't have that ugly band there. And so like actually this is what I can show this off as like the final copies, whereas like I go back and look at my early promotional reels and TikToks for Elegy, and they had that just that gross black band there. Whereas Ingram, you get that, and like the hard covers, those are when I feel really cool.
Oh yeah, as much of it is like a pain to work with Ingram, sometimes their books are spectacularly printed. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, so I do want to mention really quick. I wish I had mentioned this at the top, but thank you to Adrian M. Gibson and FanFiAddict, you know, for letting us use this YouTube channel and come to you guys. And if anyone's out here and you're watching and you're not already subscribed, what are you doing? Go and subscribe to this channel because Adrian's got amazing content.
Oh yeah.
Right?
They had Richard Swan just barely too. I mean, I'm not him, but we're on the same channel. That's kind of cool, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, so Josh, you mentioned that this book is an entry point, which is cool. How like does it relate with the rest of the story? Like, do the events here happen like before the other stories or after? Or how does it connect?
Yeah, so basically the way that I write all the novellas in the series is going to be one in between each main book, and it's a trilogy, so 3 novellas, 3 main books. And each of the novellas is kind of designed to cover off a different side character in the main story, and kind of like, you know, tell their origin story, so to speak. So I guess for me, it's a bit of like a playground opportunity because I can toy around with, you know, the specifics of these characters that I otherwise wouldn't know about. But in terms of how it relates time-wise, all the novellas are set in a war that comes to an armistice, a moment of armistice, 50 years before the main series. So all of the novellas are focused around something that's leading up to that point in different parts of the world. and then obviously that plays into the main series through various ways. So, but this one was really cool because I got to play around with a new culture that I hadn't had the chance to really play around with yet in world. So a feudal Japanese inspired culture mixed with a bit of like Pacific Islander, a people that voyaged across the seas to come over to the continent of Quara, and a people that are ultimately kind of imbued with the natural magic of the world without realizing it. And so it was a really interesting story from that perspective too, from like a world building magic system perspective.
Do you have one of your books, your physicals of Exile with you?
Oh yeah, I do.
Can you show us the physical of Exile?
I can.
Because I loved it. You know, you got the
One.
giant, right? I mean, gorgeous. But the giant
Brown.
tree there, and that's so central in the stories. And then this one, the initial setting is just below the giant tree,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. And the other thing about this world, which I've spoken about in the past, is that it's a bit of a colonialist kind of storyline. So humans come and settle on the continent, and the indigenous people who are known as Aobians, like this guy here, they actually live in these great trees. And so kind of, you know, getting to tease out the interactions between humans and them in world is really interesting too. So yeah, like, I mean, I think it's a good novella, but we'll see what people think. Nick, you've read it.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good novella. Like, I agree. I was flying through it, like, you know, with the popcorn. You know, like there were so many dramatic moments too. I've gotten to see. I don't know if you've shared this one publicly yet, Josh, but also got to see some special art that you had commissioned, and like it really like obviously paints the picture, but you know, of like a scene that was like, it was so dramatic when I saw that after having read it, and it was yeah.
Yep. Yeah, but my lips stay sealed on that art until it's time to show it off. But yeah, I have been doing a lot of that in the background. Actually, all of us have.
So that's coming, guys.
And it's
that's
so cool seeing that. Yeah, it's coming. Yeah, it's definitely coming.
And that's I love so cool. That's just like, I think that everyone out there is getting cool illustrations for their books and stuff, because it's like, we're not here acting like we're super adult people that just don't like pictures in their books. Everybody wants pictures in their books. Like, if a book has illustrations, I'm so sold. And there's a lot of books out there that like I've really gone and looked at like and bought because they're like, oh, internal illustrations. I'm like, oh, I'm done. I need this.
Yep.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Character art too. It's nice to see people's like interpretations of their characters or like an artist's rendition of it too.
Yeah, yours have been sick actually, Rob. The ones that you got for Pathlighter.
I was just gonna say that.
Incredible.
I kind of want to like send out like trading cards of all my characters by the time that all the series and stuff are done. So that's a background project going on.
Nice. That seems pretty cool. All right, so let's shift over to you, Mr. Kaden. So, of course, this big chunky book is the second in the series. So this is not an entry point, but this is where you have to already know a little bit about organ harvesting magic to jump into this book, right?
Yeah, this is 100% not an entry point. But something that I really appreciate in books that is pretty rare is the like previously in ... So I put that in here because I recognize a lot of people probably like me have poor memory, and noting a lot of the stuff that went on in Elegy too, it's very easy to forget. And usually when I forget, I will go and rely on the book's wiki or fortunately, you, Mr. Fuller, you had some great recaps for some of the Cradle books that I actually went back and watched when I was going those. And, you know, like, and those are big indie books, but just so many books out there don't have them. Yeah. And so I made sure to put that in there because there are, like, you might remember the main story, but there are some big things that you need to remember. But yes, I tell people that, yeah, you have to read Elegy. I mean, this is the number 2 in the series. I get a lot of questions if people ask if they should read Beastcall before or after Elegy. It takes place before Elegy. You honestly don't need it, but it is a book I highly recommend reading, especially before Duet, just because Runeth, the main character in Beastcall, is a minor character in Elegy, and he's a point of view character in Duet. And he's just been someone really fun to explore because I initially wrote him in to just a scene in Elegy, and I needed a novella reader magnet, and I went with him, and now he could be arguably the most important character in the series. So that's just something interesting. Yeah.
That's interesting that you said that, Kaden, because that's exactly what happened with the main character in The Child of the Greenwood. He was like a one-off guy, shows up in one chapter in Exile, and then I pulled him into this story and wrote his story, and now I'm just like obsessed with this guy. Like I just can't wait to flesh him out more in the rest of the series, and I think he might be the key to a lot of the things that I've needed answers for myself. So it's weird how stuff like that works out.
Because that is exactly it. It's not like I took Runeth and made him just like, oh, he's gonna lead the company now. But it's like, yeah, he had a weird puzzle piece that makes everything connect. And it just because I like to plot things out, but I am so much on the sport of the moment inspiration. Whereas when I was jumping into writing book 3, I knew some big concluding things that need to happen. And you're going to the big thing, you're like, okay, there's gonna be some big battles, there's gonna have this happen. And I started the prologue and I'm like, well, this is going in a completely different direction that I never expected, but it is so much better than anything I could have just plotted out. It had to just come naturally.
Nice. So given, Kaden, that this is not an entry point, can you, for anyone that hasn't read the books yet, what's the pitch for book 1 for Elegy?
This is my same pitch that I go to when all my like in-person sales stuff. Yeah. It is political fantasy with an organ transplant magic system. That meaning you are going to face lots of secrets, conspiracies, court drama, stuff like that. So if you love the dynamics of all the houses in Game of Thrones, if you love the magic in Brandon Sanderson's books and the world building there, this series is perfect for you, because I would say that those two are the most inspirational authors for me when I wrote these.
Nice. So then I love that pitch. I think that's a very strong pitch. What's kind of I mean, obviously the pitch for book 2 is like, hey, it's book 2 in the series. You read book 1, you like it, but like, tell us a little bit more about kind of like what we can expect in book 2.
Yeah. So people that have read book 1, I say that last scene in Elegy, you get a lot more of that. And people that have read it, the little illustration that's in the back, that is kind of, it becomes the central point of the series. And then like on some of my social media things, as you can see with the cover, I really like embracing the weird. I like trying to make my books unique. So I tell people that we have golden horned bat dragons. And in essence, these are called Zlatogs. They are monsters that communicate with their riders via percussion, kind of like echolocation for bats. So that was something interesting that I put in there.
Nice.
And yeah, I think it's just kind of eye-catching, whereas like, people can see this and they can think a whole plethora of things. Whereas this one, you're like, okay, cool, we're getting monsters and there's battles, and you know that right off the bat.
Right. Definitely reading violence. You took the question like right out from my mouth, Kaden, because I was going to ask you about the cover of book 2. I think that's like, it's pretty strong cover. I like it. So that's cool. So Josh and Kaden, I would love for the two of you to kind of maybe look and see like a review that you've had of like kind of the universe that these stories are in, that like a review that you've had recently that, or maybe even not recently, but it stuck out with you and you've been like, I feel so good about this review. And while they're doing that, Rob or Isaac, when you want to jump in and like kind of, you can share a little bit about what you think of their stories that you've got to experience so far.
Yeah, I can go. I read Elegy recently. Actually, it was one of my last reads of 2024, and I think that Caden's comparisons to Game of Thrones and the houses and their dynamics between each other is spot on. I think there's so much history that is underneath every interaction with members of the same house, and when members talk to people from different houses, and it all just has like this tension simmering in like underneath the surface. You feel like there's a bomb about to go off at any point. And you see these people with these deep held beliefs that are clashing with each other, and it comes to a point where you're like, how else can it resolve other than by blowing up? There's not a way to do it. But even then, there's still a lot of humanity, and there's still a lot of people that want to, stray away from violence. Like, everyone knows how bad war can be, or everyone says how bad war can be, and they're trying desperately to avoid it. But it can be, sometimes it's more complicated than that, or sometimes it's simpler than that, but people refuse to see it. So there's a lot of really great like human moments in there, as well as the high fantasy moments.
Nice.
And I think that's what I enjoy about Josh and Kaden's writing is that, so Josh has a fascinating magic system, and so does Kaden. Very different, very unique. Their stories, while fantasy, are very different. But what they do really well is they take, so Kaden's example of he takes politics down to the personal level, and you get to a feel for how that is affecting that character. So there's, broad strokes in the culture and in the in-world, but we're getting somebody's experience. And Josh does the same thing. You can take something like clean water and it become an individual's experience in Josh's world. And that's a really cool thing that they both do. Very character-driven writing, it was just fun to read. It's my favorite type.
Nice. Love it. Yeah. All right, Josh, Kaden, which one of you wants to go first and share with us a review?
I can go first. So I got a review recently, and I did ask the author whether they'd be keen to read my book. But Lauren McRae, she is an awesome indie fantasy author. She's the author of this beautiful book, The Iron Crown, which is one of my favorite indies, actually. I need to write a proper review for it at some point. But anyway, I reached out to her and she read The Child of the Greenwood. And I think the thing that I love about her experience of it is that it confirmed to me that what I was trying to do worked, partly because I think I've got some kind of similarities to her prose in some ways, but also because she was really honest about what worked fundamentally, and like even some small technical things in my prose that I can continue to work on. And that was something that I took away with me. And that kind of like level of critique for me is very important for my development as a writer, because ultimately she's an indie author that I look up to. But her general review of the book was very positive, and so that's actually gone on the back of the book now.
Nice.
So I'm looking forward to seeing what people think of that. But yeah, it was a fun moment. It's the first time I've gotten an author quote from someone that has been doing it for a lot longer than I have, and that I really look up to. Obviously, I've gotten other author quotes before and stuff, but this was the one that I had to ask for and that I actually got. So it was a nice moment.
It's the thing I love the most about like especially the SFF bookish community. It's such a nice community, and everyone just really wants to help each other, and everyone's just really wants more books, particularly with dragons. Like
yeah.
Isaac's like.
Did Sam pay you to say that?
I think Sam asked a very important question. He said, "Hey, I missed to talk about Isaac's book, dude. How many dragons are in the sequel?"
Nicholas, if you could just turn your camera to make sure Sam's not off screen with a gun pointed at your head.
I promise there's no. That's right, Sam. Right? No. Good times. No, great community. And by the way, those of you here, if you want to go ahead and hit that like button, that would actually be doing Adrian some favors, I think, on his channel. So that would be great. So yeah,
and we should also say to go give Adrian all the support at the moment, because he's a finalist for SPF VO10.
Yes.
So give him some love. Yeah.
Fantastic book.
I just thought of this because you held up his book too. Is that voting open in that FanFi whatever thing?
I think that is too. Yeah, the FanFiAddict awards are currently open for voting as well.
And
right.
this guy's book is there.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Isaac, any chance you could dig up that link and drop it in the comments, maybe? But while
Yep.
while we're doing that, Kaden, how about you? Review that kind of stuck out with
Yeah.
you.
So one of the cool things about getting a sequel out there is, I mean, it's nerve-wracking. You can have so many people go out and say they liked book one, but the real test of that is to see if they follow up with it. And even though I don't have like the biggest following community, it was really cool to see some of the people that I sent arcs out to those people that expressed that they really enjoyed my book. And some people just flew through it. And there are a lot of different things that happen in this book, so you never know how people are going to take it. But just like some of my Goodreads reviewers and people that I'd interacted with a little here's just some things that they've said kind of taken from it. A great example of the sequel being greater than the original. And then another one said, in sagas or series, second books have always been the make or break book for me. And I have to say, this book of Kaden Love has made this entire saga worth every second of reading it. Yes, including the unpublished books. So just having that validation, like I already said before, I felt personally that this book was a lot better than Elegy, even though I really liked Elegy. I think I put a lot of great things in there and I'm proud of it. This is the one where I really felt just so much more like an author. And to have people enjoy that more, maybe to have people like kind of the bolder directions of decisions that I took, just makes me feel so happy. And even though these are probably, a lot of these people are ones that I'll never meet, maybe not even have any interactions with them, just to see other people out there reading and enjoying what I've written makes me happy, and it makes all of this worth it.
Right. I mean, yeah, that's the magic of art, right? And this art
Exactly.
is being able to create this vast world in our minds, but then share it with people that we've never met, never spoke to, and take them on this journey. It's a pretty amazing. Now, if I recall, obviously both of you are working with the same editor, and I believe that one or both of you had an experience recently with the editor where she was like, "Man, this is like," kind of to Caden's point of like, "You've really come into your own here," right?
Yeah, I think both of us have had that with. I mean, Sarah's really good at she's really good at, I mean, everything obviously, but developmental detail is something that she's absolutely excellent at, which I sometimes get sore eyes for, just because when you're the writer and you're constantly looking at stuff, it's very easy to kind of, I guess, build yourself a subconscious threshold of what not to bother with. But yeah, I definitely noticed, and Caden's probably had the same thing, where Sarah was able to basically pull apart this one a little bit less and say, yeah, like, your prose has really come into its own. So that's a cool moment, because I think it kind of sets us up for whatever we write next. We kind of know what our voice is, and it feels a lot more natural to write the first word nowadays,
Sure.
And like I trust Sarah so much with my work. So, by the time my book gets out to the general public, I'm not really that worried about general reactions, because I feel like Sarah's the one that's going to deliver exactly how quality of a book it is. And she's really blunt and clear with Elegy, the problems we need to fix. So by the time I rewrote so much and got it to what it is now, I felt so happy with it. And I always have that kind of fear, when, like, I've got a book with her right now that I'm waiting on feedback, and I felt like it was really tight. I was happy with it. But you always are just like, okay, what problem do I need to fix? Because it's like, it can be here, grammar checks, or it can be, okay, you need to rewrite these few chapters, and just like, oh, it's so much harder to go like rewrite something in the middle, especially after like setting aside for months. And so when she returned book 2 to me, and like I said, basically it was just grammar and I suggest you add a chapter on this, it was the biggest relief in the world. And I was just on top of the world. And just the praise that she gave me, just like, it feels super validating, just like, because she is an author herself. Not to mention that she recently edited Scott Lynch's most recent Gentleman Bastard stories. So to like have that there, it's just like, okay, wow, and I mean, she does it for Ryan Cahill as well. And it just, it feels validating. It's really cool just to have that real professional look. And I'm sure it's something that we'll continue to see as we improve and write more. Because, I am proud of every book that I've written. They can only get better.
Are there any trunk books you'd like to tell us about now that you're proud of?
Oh, me? Yeah, I made an announcement a little while ago on my Instagram. Toothsucker is my next book that is coming out. And it is a cyberpunk tooth-eating vampire story. Very weird. And
It's gonna be so good.
I am so excited to get that out there. It's pretty short, so it's 81K. My wife said that it's her favorite book that I've written. And I know our man Andrew Watson right there. He also is writing cyberpunk potentially. But he and I have talked about Cyberpunk Edge Runners, which I think is the greatest single season of TV. Like just a self-contained story. So it's a huge inspiration. I'm trying some really interesting things with it. Like Nick, we've talked about Royal Road. But this is the one that I am really hoping to get out to some bigger people. I've talked to Daniel Green a couple of times, and I'm hoping there's a chance I can get it to him because Neon Ghosts is a cyber vampire story that I loved. But I'm really interested in seeing, I guess, getting out to a new audience. I just keep going on a tangent here, but cyberpunk's a big genre. This is a quicker, much easier entry because even though there's a lot of world building, it's single person perspective. Vampires are hot. It has subtle romance. That's hot. And I feel like I can just read a different thing, And I'm sorry, Andrew, to get back to your comment. This is not the Dragon Man. That is my one thing. Everybody that's out there writing dragons, go do it. Go do your thing. I'm never going to write a dragon.
I can relate to that.
Cool. Well, I'm kind of curious to talk more about some of that other stuff, but I also want to focus on the book that you have out now. One thing that I am interested though about this current book, Kaden, this is the second book in the series, and is it the second or it's the second time you're doing a Kickstarter, right? I don't think you did a Kickstarter for Beastcall, did you?
No, I didn't. So Beastcall it's my reader magnet, so it's the you can go buy it on my website or Amazon. Paperback ebook is on my website. I did a Kickstarter with book 1, and honestly, because it was a lot easier with book 2, I went pretty laid back rather than doing you get this with the what are they called, stretch goals and all that. It was just, if we reach this, we'll add an illustration. If we reach this, we'll add an illustration. Because I think it was just a good way to get attention, especially with future books. I might not do Kickstarters for everyone, but it's hard to market a book 2 just right off the bat. Whereas the Kickstarter gave me a perfect opportunity. Even though I've had fewer backers than book 1, I've had much bigger income with it because so many people are buying both books. It's a great way to get both of them. And I occasionally the hardcover of Elegy will be on Amazon, but mostly I only sold that through Kickstarter and on my website. And it was just really great to get out there. Not a lot of really crazy things. Like I was saying, it had the Volm pin and some illustrations. That's all I've really included on there.
I love it. I mean, I think that's really cool, and I like this idea of kind of using it as a launch, and Zach ZSD Monty has been doing that with some of his books too. But I mean, it sounds like your kind of impetus for it was just being able to reach this slightly different audience and kind of have a little bit more momentum around the launch. And it sort of, I feel like it makes the launch last a little bit longer because you have like the whole Kickstarter campaign period of like talking about this book is out now, right? Like rather than just sort of like launch day of one day. Has that been kind of your experience, Kaden? Is that sort of your thinking around like wanting to do it the second time also?
Yeah, and rather than just having people like pre-order it somewhere, I feel like a lot of people might be getting sick of Kickstarters, but it is an eye-catching thing. A great thing is that
Who's
people.
That sounds like getting sick of books, like blasphemy,
Yeah.
blasphemy.
But one of the cool things with Kickstarters is that because I had a successful first campaign, I backed plenty. I was fortunate enough to reach the Projects We Love Kickstarter thing, which honestly, I don't know if it's done anything for me, because most of my initial backing was early on, but it's just been, if you go to the publishing fiction section of Kickstarter, scroll down a bit and you'll see my book there. And then being able to, I don't know if you guys saw, Phil Tucker is doing the deluxe edition of Bastion. He is a huge indie author, really beautiful book. I just reached out to him and we both shouted out each other's books on our recent updates. So it just kind of allows for some interactions like that.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is like having a video right on the Kickstarter page. So I mean, when people give advice on making those videos, it's not always just a trailer for your product, even though it works. It's a lot of, here's my thing, invest in me. Like, this is what I'm doing. So I could be super clear and candid saying like, hey, I'm an author. I'm trying to do my best getting my book out here. I put a lot of work into it, and it means a lot if you back it. So people can just see me there. And it has a big explanation for people that run upon it naturally, what book 1 is about. Because honestly, I don't even have the blurb for book 2 on there because it might spoil a little bit. But if people have read book 1, they're probably going to buy book 2 if they're on that page at all. And new people can see what the series is about.
Nice. So Josh, like obviously you haven't done a Kickstarter, but you actually have done something a little bit similar because you've been doing limited number signed copies of your releases, right?
Yeah. So I've got my own website with a
I don't need
web store on there.
Kickstarter. I got my own. Fuck the Kickstarter.
No. I guess the thought process behind, because the thing that's really tricky for me, and a lot of Aussie authors know this too, is just like fulfilling orders from this part of the world is pretty difficult. And so I have kind of toyed with the idea of doing a Kickstarter at some point for some special editions down the track, but I'm not really there yet. But what has been really cool is the last couple books I've done a very brief run of signed and numbered hardcovers that are coming through from my web store. They get sent out in a nice box with a bunch of goodies in there. And it's been really good to see people kind of rally around for that. By the way, there's 2 left. So if anyone here is keen to get one, you can head to my web store. But yeah, like it's a limited run. You can't get them anywhere else. There's usually custom stuff in there. So in the Greenwood hardcover, I've actually done the chapter heading artwork myself this time. I used to have an artist for that, but I've kind of gotten back into drawing for this book, so that was interesting. But yeah, I guess like the cool thing about it is it means I can take the book and the excitement around the book away from the big players. So instead of posting an Amazon pre-order link,
right,
I can actually derive a lot of that payback to myself. And the important thing about that is that money is going to go straight back into the book. So it's going to go straight back into what I need for the next book, right? And as good as it is to get people purchasing books through Amazon and stuff like that, as an indie author, we have the ability to give ourselves the best margins possible, and places like Amazon can cull that away from us, just because that's the nature of how it runs there, which is fine. But every time I've had an opportunity to be able to kind of give back to my readers, plus also be able to keep what I need to keep the art of writing sustainable, that's kind of the idea behind doing the limited runs.
Yeah, love it. And one day, as Mr. Josh Walker becomes a bigger and bigger name, I'm gonna be like, I've got the limited run. You know,
That's it. That's it. Yeah.
Right. No, I think you're absolutely right though, that like direct sales is, I think a lot of indies are completely overlooking the opportunity that direct sales presents, particularly when you're like, I mean, our mutual friend Zach Diamante, I think he does such a great job of like, hey, if you want signed copy, this is how to do it. You buy it directly from my website, you know, and of course he has like a little bit of a margin for a signed copy because most people are charging a little bit more for signed copy. Not an outrageous, but I mean, he's getting you know, better margins, and yeah, it's just smart
and on
business.
that as well, like I would prefer to keep my readers close to me. Like I'd prefer to keep my fan base close to me because they care about my work and I care about having them. So, you know, I guess like the point of what I'm saying is it's really hard to do that when the major services that are providing your books are holding your audience at a distance. And so something that's really clever about what Zach does and what I've been trying to do is that you can keep your audience close to your home base, which is your website, your newsletter, etc. They've got a place to come back to. And also just the personal experience of receiving a book direct from the author is usually a bit more special, you know? Like I don't just send the book out in a brown paper bag and you know, there's an invoice in there and Bob's your uncle, you know. You know what I mean.
No, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
He's like, I know what you mean, and that's exactly what I do. No,
but I can throw a bookmark in there or something, you know, and it just makes it a bit more meaningful. So, and it's got my name written on the front in my writing. It's, you know, there's something a little bit more special. And I remember as a reader myself, I could never feel close enough to the authors that I loved reading. And that's something that indie has given us in the last 5 to 10 years, especially, is that now you can actually start to feel close to the authors that you love reading.
You know, like fair. But I do feel like, I mean, I don't know, I just feel like the world is a different place now, where like it's like I had Lin-Manuel Miranda, who wrote the musical Hamilton, like a tweet of mine at one point. I was like, oh my God, he knows I'm a weird person. You know what I mean? Like it's so much smaller now than it was, like, you know, way back when the social media didn't exist, and like how would you ever interact with these people? But I feel you. Yeah, I mean, like, of course, the indie sphere, we're able, you know, come join the SFF Insiders, or, you know, join FanFiAddict, join all these wonderful different communities or these Discords where you can go talk with a bunch of different offers and maybe do buddy reads that are super fun, you know. Yeah, it's a wonderful space and a wonderful age we live in. And Andrew's got me laughing though. Andrew said that the scumbag Andrew in the chat saying he's already got his limited edition out on eBay for $2,000.
I know. What, like, we
all know someone like him.
Right.
One cool thing that he did is that, like, you can like see a bunch of like bookstagrammers and stuff, people like that are like post pictures of his new upcoming book, The Black Mantle, where it has like ARC copy or whatever, like where the title would be. And then this scumbag probably has his stuff. Just he's probably selling this like a hidden special author copy signed on every page. 2000. I'm just kidding. Go buy his book. He's a cool guy.
Yes. Andrew knows I'm joking, and there's love. But I don't want to derail too much. But I've become a pretty big fan of Dungeon Crawler Carl. Have you guys seen, like, he got a deal where he's trad pub for hardcovers for the print editions, but his original paperback prints when he was only indie, these days those are like, well, he has all the he can't sell the paperbacks anymore himself because the traditional publisher
and stuff like that, right?
He still owns like the artwork and all that fun stuff. Yeah. But and like all that artwork is still on the audiobook that he has all the rights for, and he has all the rights on the ebook, so it's still like the same artwork on that. It's just there's different art for the they're doing hardcovers only so far. But those original like paperbacks that you can't buy anymore, if you go and like look on eBay and whatnot, those things are selling for hundreds of dollars. Like, it's insane how like that.
But
that
the cool thing is, like, I saw him that he like replied to a tweet of someone like where they posted this price there, and he just has shelves and shelves of them, just kind of like, you know, some of us have of our books, and he's like, I just have these all over, but you know, I've got mine signed by him, the old indie copy, and it's just super cool to have.
Nice.
I actually got through my good friend Kristen Schaefer, she's a writer for SFFI. I got a really neat signed hardcover of Dungeon Crawler Carl, and Matt dedicated it to the weasel who runs a bakery in my book. So that was pretty cool.
That's cool.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Love that story in the comments too. I met Matt at Dragon Steel, and he gave me one of those paperbacks for free. I nearly pooped my pants.
Yeah.
Very on brand. Very on. That's cool. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about process, I think, but I feel like I've been dominating the conversation. So Rob or Isaac, anything you gonna any question at the top of your mind you have for them, or just love that you want to share for their stories, or
I want to go back to something that Kaden said about having the previously on Paladins of the Harvest series, because I think that is such a it's a much like easier way to do that than like sprinkle little stuff in like throughout the book, and then it also just it feels less like you're holding the reader's hand as well when you're putting that in. Was that always kind of the intention, like you were originally maybe thinking of adding that little prologue of previously on, or were you originally thinking of, you know, like adding little tidbits like that alluded to the events of the first book in the sequel?
Yeah, I definitely considered a couple different options. We'll say he who shall not be named, Ryan Cahill, on his website has all of those where it's like because I remember when I read of Blood and Fire, I forgot like most of what happened when I went to the second book, and I just went there, and you know, it had the previously there. And like I said, as a reader, I rely on a lot of those summaries because I'm not always going book to book to book. Stormlight Archive, when I read Oathbringer, it was so long since I'd read the first two, so I literally just went through every chapter summary on the wiki to recap everything. And a lot of what I've done in my book is it comes from what I like as a reader. I love, you know, court intrigue. I love twists. That is in the story, and I put it there because that. And then you go look at just the actual book content. We have a map. I love having a map to see where things are. Glossary. Having a character guide. When I was going through A Song of Ice and Fire, I would forget so many names because there are so many. And you're like, oh, which house is this person? Oh, they're working for the Lannisters. That makes sense. And so I just put it in there. And so naturally, when I was like, okay, a lot of people are going to forget certain things that happen in book one, I need to go put it there. Because, you know, most people are probably going to remember the main events, but there are some significant things that you might want to be aware of going into book two. And so, yeah, I put it there. It was painful to write, as is any other synopsis, just basically crunching your book into a few paragraphs. But yeah, I did it.
Nice. Then I also do have a question for Josh too about your series sort of plan where you had 3 novels and then 3 novellas. Was it always the plan for 3 novels and 3 novellas, or did you like maybe have a novella or 2 planned in there and then like something like kind of sprung out of the sandbox and like kind of spun off from world building, or you really wanted to like get to know a character a little bit more or something like that?
That's a really good question. Yeah. So basically, the novellas were never planned. And after I wrote Exile, and I'd sent it off to my first ever alpha readers, I basically had 3 or 4 weeks where I just had nothing to do. So I sat down and I wrote the rest of the gods in that time. And it was purely discovery written. And I think I needed it to be able to kind of understand some deeper aspects of the lore that I hadn't quite nutted out. Plus also to kind of understand the character who was a mentor character in Exile a little bit more too. So that just kind of came from there very organically and very kind of unplanned. And I would say that I tend to lean more on the discovery writing end of the spectrum than the outlining end anyway. But and then yeah, like with the other novellas, initially there was just going to be 1, but then I realized when I wrote Exile that I had the ability to flesh out so many different people's backstories. And again, sandbox, like what you were saying before, like it's a playground for me, but also it's a great opportunity for readers because when the series is done, they'll have the option to start with 4 different books, and they can choose what order to read those in. It doesn't matter, you know, and people read with different preferences. Like, I really like slow burn, heavy politicking, you know, slow introduction, world building, multi POV, epic, vast scale stuff. That's actually something I really love about Elegy. But I know readers who prefer to read something that's intensely character focused with limited points of view and much more of like emotional storytelling happening. And they're kind of just chucked into the world, and that they're left to figure the world out. The characters are the main deal. So that's the other thing, is that both of these formats, I guess, offer something different to people. You know, the novella suits one person's taste, and the main book suit another.
Nice.
Awesome.
You kind of covered some of what I was going to ask about, but I'll ask it maybe a different way. Has your process changed from when you first started writing Exile to now? And what does it look like now compared to what it used to look like, if it's changed?
Yeah, it's hard to summarize the differences because I think Kaden will be able to shed light on this too. The fact that we're now into our series rather than starting it off means that when you're writing, it becomes much more scattered of a process, because even though you know the world more innately, you constantly have to throw back to what you've written before to check for things like continuity, lore development, world building inconsistencies, all that kind of stuff. So I find that the writing itself can be really staggered. Like, some days I'll sit down, at the moment I'm drafting book 2, and some days I'll sit down and I'll write a chapter, and then I'll realize, oh, hold on, I actually need to go back and kind of rip that up from the ground up, and see if it works with this other random chapter in Exile that talked about this thing. So the process has changed, I think, by consequence of the fact that I'm now mid-story, if that makes sense. But I think if I was to write another book 1, which I am kind of working on that stuff in the background at the moment with a completely different thing, that feels very similar to Exile, where there's a bit of discovery writing, and then I'll kind of go forward and I'll back plan parts of it, and then keep discovery writing to a goalpost, and then go back and blah blah blah. So yeah, it's a mixture. It's a mixture of what I normally do, and again, like a consequence of being in the middle of the story. Would you say the same thing, Kaden?
100%. One of the things I liked about going into book 2 is, you have the world set up. You are comfortable usually with the characters, so you kind of know where you're going. But exactly like you said, you know, it's hard to always retain everything, even though you came up with the entire story by yourself. You always have to look back on things that you've written before. And I think that was one of the benefits when I was writing Duet. I was also doing the audiobook for Elegy, so I was able to kind of review it there. And now writing book 3, I have to go back and like, book 2 is very fresh in my mind, but book 1 is like, it's so much more distant. And rather than, you know, like getting to the end, and I don't have to just check the book's content, I have to go and compare it to the others. And I, like Josh saying, I think that's something freeing about a novella. You can keep it just based on the rules of the world, but you can go do whatever you want. And starting a new series, you're able to just kind of let all those things go aside. And I don't understand how some of those authors that like, you see why Brandon Sanderson has so many beta readers and people like that, because there are probably people out there that know his world
better than he
like
does.
the facts better than he does, because they study it and they create whole like Wikipedias for it. And so, you know, like, sometimes people point out something in my book, a line that they loved, and it's like, oh, I wrote that, okay, I forgot. But yeah, like I said, my writing process is, when I'm writing, I'll also go do chapter summaries just for myself. Horrible grammar. It wouldn't make sense to like anyone that is reading it there, because I just like abbreviate a bunch and be like, this happened, this happened, this happened. But it's just to kind of help keep my memory up to date of it.
That's
Can I
smart.
actually? I want to ask a. Sorry, Nick.
No.
I was just going to say, can I ask an adjacent question to what Isaac was asking, which is, like, I mean, I think the big thing about Kaden's recent accomplishment with Duet is that you've actually finished a book 2. So, like, for a lot of us, we're in the middle of a book 2, and yeah, so like, props to you firstly because it's huge, but also, like, what were the big takeaways from that experience? Because I'm finding that I'm getting caught a lot on some of the things that you just described then. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is not a tool that everybody has access to, but like I said, an audiobook is a very great thing to have because you can play it just as you're going through, and if you need to review something, because honestly, there's nothing better than going back and rereading to see exactly what you have. I am personally still trying to figure out the best way to do notes for my books, where I know a lot of people really like Scrivener because you can have like Zach Diamani was telling us the other day about a plotter. There are so many great tools out there, but I don't use Scrivener because I use the Ghetto, even though everybody hates the cloud Google Docs, for the sole reason that I can write at work on my phone. Like just in my downtime, I honestly, most days are super busy, where, you know, I can get home and sit down and write maybe 600 words. I can get earlier in the day just in my downtime. And so that is the same thing, you know, I'll go ahead and like, to make people feel safer, I'll save and backup drafts and such. But you know, I basically just have a really long document that I call it my Paladin's Wiki. It's my personal notes, where, you know, every book has their individual chapter summaries, significant things that happen to characters I'll try to put in there. I haven't been as great with it. But the going back to the good thing with audiobooks is if you're doing it while you're doing it, I probably wouldn't have re-listened to Elegy, but I was forced to because you have to review your book. And some people might like it, but honestly, I'm going through the audiobook for Duet right now, and it is painful for me. I'm happy with what I've done, but it feels like I'm listening to myself talking. Like, you know, the awkward feeling when you're watching yourself.
Yeah.
It is that. So it's like I just don't like to listen to it. I love listening to books on my runs, and so I honestly will like play Dark Souls and put this on in the background because I don't need 100% focus. I just need to listen if there's little inconsistencies there. And besides that, it's just making sure you get good beta readers when it's all said and done, and particularly making sure that you get the kind of readers that pick out those things. Because, you know, when I had my early beta readers, even ARC readers, they would just notice things being like, wait, isn't this, or shouldn't this be this here? People that have read my books know that there are things called endowers and the endowed. I've had a couple times where I just had a typo and switched it in certain circumstances where most people wouldn't even bat an eye. My editor missed it, but they were like, shouldn't it be this? And I was like, thank you so much for saving me. So I've kind of just rambled on, but I feel like, yeah, the main tenets are find a way to review your earlier books that's best for you. And even though, like, I know, like you said, you're much more of a discovery writer, and I am as well. Just having a little bit of an outline so that you kind of keep a plot consistent. So like with a certain character, I might be really inspired to take them a different direction, but I have to remember kind of like the character that I've built up already. Is this something they would do? Is this true to their original goal in the series? If it changes it, I need a reason there.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think I've naturally started to outline more in book 2 because of exactly what you're saying, to try to maintain that consistency. And you know, Brandon Sanderson talks about, you know, tone promise all the time, like set tone promise. the thing with a series that's really hard is that the tone promise is set from the start of book one. It's not set in every book. Like there's minor tweaks to that naturally occur as a result of story progression, but yeah, you set the tone from the very start. So yeah, I think no matter whether you are a discovery writer or not, like Kaden's saying, you definitely need a more rigorous outline for your book too. Yeah. You're muted, Nick.
You're muted, Nicholas.
Yeah.
What a noob.
You're muted too, Isaac.
Just kidding. Just kidding. You guys took the question out of my mouth. I was going to ask the same thing of like what tools you guys are using to keep things kind of connected and stay on top of everything. That's interesting, Kaden, that you're like, you said you're listening to your own audiobook while you're on a run to...
No, so I listen to audiobooks while I run.
Okay. Not necessarily
as a reader, okay. I only get through like maybe 1 or 2 print books a month. So I fly through them on run. I'm at the point where now, I have to review the audiobook and like, to get it out there. So I usually do like 1 chapter and then I'll go listen to my other book. But just finding a different way to kind of distract myself. It's just my weird thing. My narrator is amazing. I love everything he's done. Nothing writing. It's just listening to myself is not pleasant, even though it's in someone else's voice.
Okay. I thought you actually didn't. You narrated Beastcall, didn't you, or no?
So on Lore, my wife and I's YouTube channel, I just read the first chapter.
Okay.
I might go back and do the other ones there. But no, I am not talented enough to get the whole series narrated.
Yeah, I thought for a while that I was like, I wonder if I could do like my own audiobook on like a Patreon or something. And then I tried recording some to share with my cousin, who's an avid audiobook listener, and I realized that that's a big mistake.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, yeah, like the professionals do one of the things that like I think they do so well that I found so difficult is like they'll create a voice for a character that's fantastic, but then they're so good about also maintaining that voice for that character throughout the whole performance, Because
one of
I
the
would
things
like
that's like,
go ahead.
Sorry, one of the things that's knocked my socks off just because of what you're saying is that at the moment I'm working with 2 narrators for an Exile of Water and Gold's audiobook. And so not only do they have the voices down pat, but like if one of them came up with a voice the first time that a character is introduced in the book, then the other one, whenever they're reading their chapter, needs to maintain some kind of equivalence with that other narrator's voice.
Wow.
So, and that's what really astounds me is that their ability to do that is just amazing. Yeah,
That's amazing that they're working together like that. That's super cool.
What is the status of can we get any information on the status of your audiobook?
Oh yeah, well, so Exile is kind of in the beginnings of production at the moment, but the rest of the gods is actually done. And it's got a set release date. The narrator is Imogen Church. She's amazing. She did Adrian Gibson's Mushroom Blues. She's also done some huge trad stuff. Like she's done so much.
Recently praised by Stephen King. Yeah.
Shout out from Stephen King this week. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I messaged her about that, and she was like, "Yeah, I can die now." But yeah, no, she's wonderful, and so that one I'm hoping will drop around April. That's the current plan. As we know with audio, though, one of the weird things about audio is that when you send it out for distribution, like random retailers just publish it whenever the hell they want. So I believe if you're if you really want it and you got a bit of a scope on you, you can find it. You can find it. Annoyingly for me.
Yeah.
But it is out there. Yeah.
It's just like one of those that I'm so excited because I'm not gonna hide that I was one of the people that nominated Exile for the FanFi Awards because I thought it was such an amazing debut. And my wife, she loves books, but she's an illustrator, and I don't know the last time she read a book. She just does all on audio, and yours definitely have style of that and the environmental themes. Like she is a huge environmentalist, and like this is a book she's going to eat up. So I'm very excited to get it.
Yes. Yeah, it'll come soon.
Nice. Well, you guys want to talk more about process and like tips for banging out a novella in 3 weeks, Josh? Because like,
that's not usual for me. I would say like the novellas are an exception to the rule always because they're just an organic thing. Actually, I think Rob, you can speak to this a little bit too because you kind of had that experience with Death Metal Bard, right? Like it was like a very kind of organic.
Yeah, it was. I mean, there was a little bit of planning, and I remember you and I kind of like talking back and forth about the outline of it. I talked to you a little bit, but aside from like those very few bullet points, it was a very organic experience, and it was it really just kind of like shot out, not necessarily in 3 weeks, but in the course of like a month and a half or something like that. It was all pretty well came out, and the I think the nice thing was that beta readers were really happy overall with like the trajectory of it. There were just like some changes here and there that needed to really just clean it up and make it smooth. But yeah, novella is such a weird thing, especially if you're going outside of your main series, or even if you're in your main series, if you're exploring like an uncovered, unturned stone of that main series, you just get to really just go to a weird place and let everything kind of play out how it does.
Well, and I think that one of the great things that Rob did is, he took a passion and put it into a story. And it's a perfect example. Your novellas don't have to be connected to your main series, even though they make a perfect entry point. And like recently, a novella that I've tried working on is definitely inspired by the things that have really enticed me at the time. And that's kind of what led to me writing Toothsucker, is that I was really big in a cyberpunk mood. I had the idea of the tooth-eating vampires for a long time. And so it's just a lot of, having an inspiration, putting it in there. And I honestly would say how I write novellas is when you send your book to beta readers. So when I sent Elegy to Sarah for editing, it is in final editing stage. There's nothing I can do until I receive that back, because I want to work with the edits she makes, and I'm always wanting to be writing. So I don't want to start writing book 2 then if she might make a big change. I busted up Beastcall then. When the moment I sent Duet to Sarah, I started writing Toothsucker. And it's the same thing that once I finish, book 3, I'll probably go and do something in that time. It's just, if you have the energy to do it, just, don't stop writing. For me, drafting is really what makes me happy. So even when I'm editing and, I'm kind of having my stuff torn down and I have to work that, I still need that time to go do what makes me happy. Just writing stuff like that. And if I don't feel like committing to writing a whole new book at that time, go do a novella, even if it never sees live day, or go do a short story. Just go do something.
Plotting can also be a nice avenue as well. If you don't really have the time or the energy to bang out a first draft, you can still come up with oh, well, this would be a really good idea if I put these two things together, or if I switch this up or turn this trope on its head or something.
So 2 questions for each of you, all of you. Anyone can jump in with this. One, how do you balance your drafting time and your editing time? How do you make a distinction? And I guess also interested in your processes for your editing, because drafting I think is the process is a little bit more straightforward, and the creating goalposts and goals is more easy than editing. Interested in that. The other one for each of you, all of you, Isaac and Rob too. How do you decide which ideas you're going to pursue versus which ideas you're not? Because I think that non-writers have this perception that you know, they have like a someone that isn't a writer is like, oh, I got this great idea, like if only I could write. And sometimes they want to share that idea, but this happens with video game studios a lot. And like people don't understand, there's like 100 people there making video games. Now all of them are passionate about video games, and all of them that are there, like they have their own idea. They don't need someone else's idea for a video game. So I just had like an idea for a book a little while ago, and I'm like, Nick, what are you doing? Like that? Yeah, that sounds fun to go write, but you can't go do that. You're like you're way deep in the work you're working on, you know. Like, so how do you guys make that call?
Did you read a tattoo, Nick?
Did I read a tattoo?
Did you ever get one?
No. You know why? Because I don't want to commit.
So I have a tattoo.
Yeah.
And the advice I got was, if you want this tattoo for a long time, for a couple of years, eventually just go get it. And to me, book ideas are the same. Like if I can't stop, I can't forget, it won't leave me alone. Like that obsession, that's when I decide that I'm writing the story.
Yeah.
So wise. I love that.
That's good.
Because it's like it haunts me. Like there are stories that are in my head that haunt me, and it won't go away. So eventually I'm going to have to write them.
Love it. Good.
Yeah.
Were you?
It was like a moment too, like one singular moment, and you're like, oh, like a story needs to go around that, and then you just pick up little things over time.
And I'm not the best at that, because I say I'm pretty disciplined in certain ways, meaning that I am going to get my 1,000 words a day in. Right now, I need 1,000 words a day in Paladins 3. At the same time, the unique way that I'm doing 2 Sucker for Royal Road, I need a bit of a backlog. So I've already started on book 2 there. And while I'm doing that, my wife and I have plotted out a book that we're writing together. And I also have an unfinished novella that I need to get to sometime. And I have a passion project. Like I have a book that I don't know when I'll get to, but I've put a lot of research into it that I'd love to get to. But, you know, I think it's just prioritizing what needs to come out. If you don't really have constraints, it doesn't matter. You can do whatever you feel is passionate. But I just look at, you know, very much from a business standpoint. Duet came out a year after Elegy. I feel like, you know, people are going to want book 3 out then, and I'm going to try my best to get it out right there. I wouldn't be double timing books if I wasn't releasing 2 Sucker through Royal Road. But like I said, that one is just kind of on the side. It's if I have extra time. I still have my rules. Okay, business-wise, I need book 3. I need the trilogy out. If I have extra time, it's just like as if I went and decided I'm going to go watch a TV show. Rather than going and doing that or playing video games, I invest it into another book. And, you know, I'm not spreading myself too wide. So I'll try to keep myself limited to 2 projects at most. A lot of that being too, if like, I wouldn't say writer's block is what I face a lot, but a lot of times where I'm just like, I really don't want to write this right now, but I still want to have that expression. I still want to write and create, do something completely different. And there's no harm done as long as I'm getting done what I need to accomplish.
Yeah, that's good advice. I'm in much of the same position at the moment where I'm trying to somewhat construct like a solid concrete plan for the series in terms of deadlines and things. But it is tricky, like Kaden said, to kind of hold off on different ideas. Anyway, there's one that's been eating away at me for literally a decade or more. And so that's kind of been worked on in the background. But it's very slow. And I guess, again, it's the kind of thing that I can just throw to when I'm not dedicating brain space to the Son of the Sleepers, you know? So yeah, like feel free to, a lot of authors I think get very scared of touching something new while they're drafting because they might lose the momentum or whatnot. But I think feel free to do that as long as that is time spent writing that day, you know, and then, you know, as soon as you're able, go back to the priority, you know. So there's a bit of self-discipline there, I guess, that you need to develop. Yeah.
sometimes it's just also good for a palate cleanser too. Like if
Yeah.
you are like hitting a wall in whatever you're currently doing, this happened with Pathlighter. Was hitting the wall with the second book, and just decided that I needed to do something a little bit fresher, something that was gonna be a little bit faster paced, something that I was gonna be able to write a lot faster. Then it would kind of rejuvenate me coming back, and that's exactly what it did. So managing different projects can be a good thing to help keep you in the mindset of not getting burned out and you want to keep writing.
I think that's a
Right.
perfect thing that you could feel burned out, but recognizing that doesn't have to be meaning that you're burned out of writing. It could just be with that thing. And a lot of people give the advice once you've finished a book to set it aside for months and then come back to it. I'm not that way at all. I want to get this thing out there, and I go right back to it because I like to keep it all fresh in my mind so that I know, like keeping that continuity, like we were saying. But like I said, I want to go back and finish a novella that I started that I got 15,000 words in, where I was working on that earlier this year, and I just reached a point where I'm like, I don't know if I like where this is going at all. And I honestly consider just throwing it away. But as I explored more of one of the cultures in my world that I touch a lot more on in book 3, I realized a lot of things that it was missing, and I got back, and like I plan on revisiting it. And it's just it's really easy to be self-critical and not like what you have made. And there's nothing wrong with scrapping a story, but sometimes we can just be overclouded. And when you really set it aside and work on something you feel better about, you can realize where you need to go, etc.
Nice.
What do you think, Nick? Like in terms of like where you're at the moment, because you're I know you recently finished something, and I know you're working on another thing, and so how have you kind of been divvying up that time and yeah?
Well, I pretty much finished one thing, so that's good. Although I had a couple beta readers, including our friend Brian, and some of them like suggested that I add. So the one thing is like a prelude novella, and I finished it, and then I had some beta readers, and they suggested I might add a little bit to it, and I was like, of course, a little bit hesitant for a moment. I'm like, I don't need that, but then like the more I sat with it, I'm like, yeah, it would be stronger for that. It would definitely be stronger, So I've added a couple chapters there, so it's still quite short. Like Kaden keeps being like, "Oh yeah, I wrote a novella and it's only like 60,000." I'm like, "What are you talking about, bro? We get out of here!" Like my novella is like 22,000, like, which is like I wanted to make sure too. I looked at like the actual word count limit for. Not that I think I would ever be in the running for this, but like I wanted to know what is the word count limit for like a Nebula or a Hugo, because I want to be like at least within that sort of like industry standards, right? If I'm going to call it a novella, then I want like other people to agree that this is a novella, right? So like 17,500 to like 45,000 is novella for like Nebula and Hugo, that sort of thing. So anyway, like I was right around like under 20,000 before I added a couple chapters. So I got those chapters. Yeah, I feel good about that. And then I trying to kind of put like the last like touches on novel 1. And I'm also going to go Royal Road, like in this week. Kaden and I have been talking about that. One thing that I want to do that I haven't seen anyone else do, like I'm not saying that no one has done this, I just haven't seen it, but like I want to put novel 1 on Royal Road and start that. And Royal Road is like a very like an audience that loves like lit RPG and action, that sort of thing. And like, cool, my novels like progression fantasy, so like there's like a character's kind of leveling up and that sort of thing. There's action, there's excitement. It's the thing that I think that audience will like. But the novella, there is more action, especially with the new chapters. There's some action, but it's also like a little bit more political, and it's a prelude, and it's about how did this main character get in this situation where he's sort of starting at the bottom and having to work his way up and fight for things, so that prelude I want to put on like Amazon right away, and not necessarily have it on on Royal Road or Patreon, but hopefully like bring people into that prelude and then bring them into the rest of the story through Patreon or Royal Road. So we'll see if that works at all. But you know, I like the idea, you know, and I also wanted, I mean, the original, I'm rambling as we all do, but but part of the original thought of doing the novella was actually all of you and getting the boxes that you guys got out to Petrick. And I was like, man, I want to get on that hype train. You know, even though I'm going to be on like Royal Road for a while, I want to have something that's like, you know, in print available on Amazon that I can kind of, you know, go promote that way in the way that you guys have. So that was a lot of the genesis for that whole story, to be honest. Like a little less than a year ago. That story has had a longer time in the oven, or sorry, shorter time in the oven than the other ones. Didn't quite crank it out in 3 weeks though. You know, still got to, you know, hashtag goals, but yeah.
No, that's good. But like you said, like the promotional potential for a novella is fantastic because, especially as indies, like we've got to work with a budget within our means, and it's really easy to allocate good amount of budget to sending out physicals of novellas because they're not expensive to print. So if you do want to do promotion, like we've done that, we've sent people like Patrick some stuff as a group and things, and novellas are a great way to do that because they're fairly inexpensive for us, they're fairly inexpensive to ship, so it's a great catch-all.
Nice. I think that'll be the thing to do at some point. What do you guys, I had this experience a little while ago, and I actually talked to Jonathan about this, where I was, earlier today, I was at another birthday party, but this was a few weeks ago. I was at a birthday party for like a friend of my daughter's, someone that she goes to daycare with, right? And my daughter's she's going to turn 4 in a couple months. So like, you know, bunch of little kids all running around, being silly, you know, playing with balloons, that sort of thing. But then one of the parents is like, hey, how you doing? And I'm like, yeah, you know, good. I've been working on writing a novel. And he was like, oh, really? Like, neat. Like, what is it about? And I was like, blah. You know, I had no idea like what to say. So how do you guys handle that when you're in that? What do you make for like an in-person pitch when you're, you know, in the situation where it's like at a cocktail party or something like that, and you don't know like what the audience that you're talking to, if they're into that sort of thing or anything? How do you begin to explain what you're doing and how you hook them?
I personally struggle with this because usually you can get a vibe from someone about what kind of reader they maybe are, and so generally I err on the side of I'm probably the only nerd in the room. Right. So as a result, it makes it really hard to pitch my book in person because I'll usually just get incredibly embarrassed about it. But the best way to do it, it's got
fighting weasels. It's really cool. I promise.
That's right. There's no way to make that sound normal. But the best way to do it, I think, is to distill that down to the themes. So if you distill it down to, like I usually say, I write adult epic fantasy with themes of environmentalism and blah blah blah, and that's kind of like it gets them asking more questions, and it also sets that tone for, oh, it's epic fantasy. Okay, I don't really read much of that, or like this guy or like this person or whatever. So so it's an inroad. It means it's less awkward when you do finally have to explain that there's fighting weasels. So
comparing it to things people know too is always good. Right. Like it's X crust with X, you know.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
That's been the interesting thing, a lot of having in-person sales, whereas, you know, I go to just Barnes & Noble, usually they sit you kind of in the front near the entrance, and you're going to get all kinds of people. You know, I'm sure there's some wonderful grandmas out there that read fantasy, but when you have this older like lady just walk up to your booth and she's like, oh, wow, did you write this book? And it's like, she's not your audience, you know? Or if like a dad comes up with his young kids and they're the ones that are interested, it's like, you might want to go over there. Where it's like, you know, I'd love to have my booth right next to all the fantasy, and you just kind of have to figure out, which is why, like even you go to like the nerdy sections at like our local Comic-Con, I had a couple sales. But, you know, not everybody's there for fantasy. It's a lot more for superheroes, anime, things like that. And stuff. Yeah, where it's like they could be interested, but there's a lot of people that, you know, they'll walk up and they'll be like, oh, I wish I could read, or it's like, oh, you're one of those, like, yeah, you just don't, or it's like, yeah, like, oh, I like the idea of reading, but I don't. They're not going to buy your book. Whereas Dragonsteel, Brandon Sanderson's convention, was by far the best selling thing that I did, because everybody there is my target audience. No matter what else they read, they are there because they read Brandon Sanderson, and his audience is my target audience. So it's just, I guess, recognizing that, not to get sad because you're not going to sell to everyone, just knowing where your audience is and how to best tailor to them when you meet them, how to pitch it to them.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah, and also the other thing is, like, don't underestimate your audience, because I've had a similar thing where I've been thrown in the front of the bookstore, and you do get people coming up to me, you're like, I'm not really sure. Anyway, I had this, I was telling you guys this actually a couple of weeks ago.
It was so cool.
Yeah, I had like a little girl like come in with her parents, and the parents were basically like, yeah, like, she's a very mature reader. And I was like, okay, how old are you? Oh, I'm 11 years old. I don't know if this is for you. You know, like, I was very hesitant to sell her the books, partly because I'm a teacher too. So there's a natural tendency of mine to protect the child, you know, if I know that, like, it's a bit too mature for them in certain ways. But she was pretty insistent, and she went through a list of things that she'd read, and I thought, well, yeah, maybe there's some dark stuff in my books, but there's nothing like super objectable. So I did sell it to her, and she actually emailed me back a week later with like a pretty in-depth review of both of the books. So that was cool. So I think sometimes it's very easy to underestimate the person who's interested in your work, and you've got to take them at face value, and yeah, make the best judgment call you can. But it's hard.
Did you email her back yet to let her know that?
I did.
You know?
I did. Yeah. So yeah, she was very sweet.
Next novel's coming. She's like, oh, cool. What about you, Isaac? Like, what do you say to folks about being a fantasy author?
So actually, that's how I start. So I start with genre. I'm actually a fantasy author, and I write kind of let's call it low fantasy, high violence books. And then I just kind of if they want more, I'll give them more. Or if I'm pitching like a group that I already know, I'll say, you know, my book is about a family who lost an empire and is trying to get it back. And then if, you know, that's how I kind of start their temperature interest.
Yeah, you give them that taster sentence, and then see if they want to buy more. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and I find like they're in or out. Like I haven't had any gray. I've had to take my money or thanks very much.
Yeah.
Or
I think that's the
cool
thing. Yeah, there's so many different ways. Just understanding, like it doesn't have to be if they're your audience or not, but just what they want. Where, you know, if someone tells me a book is a political fantasy, I'm all for it. I love politics and fantasy. But if you tell people, I've had so many people that are like, oh, like they're the people that are like, stop making books political and things like that. Like, no, it's not like I'm making political statements. It's a lot more the action happens between the people and the government, stuff like that. So that's why, you know, first off, I'll go to it's epic fantasy with an organ transplant magic system. What do you like? Brandon Sanderson. Okay, here's the magic system. What do you like? Game of Thrones. Okay, you know, the house is there. Yep, I did something similar. And I think it's, you know, if you're in a book setting, just asking them what they like. And, you know, people, if they are willing to read books and they read very, you know, simplistic books, it doesn't mean they won't try yours. It's just finding what they like about reading and then kind of directing them to it.
Right.
And going back to what Rob said too, about like comparison texts, right? Like I've had the pleasure to see one of our mates, Jonathan Weiss, in person pitching his book at people, and the success that he's derived from that is insane. But his pitch is just so simple because it's the perfect springboard into a deeper discussion. And all he has to do is say Mad Max with magic, and then show them the roadmap of where you can start with his books. And it gets them asking questions. So he starts with that automatic comparison, and straight away you're thinking, okay, well, how do those two things work? So if you can distill it down, sometimes I think as authors, we're protective about distilling our story down into something really basic. But if you can do it in such a way that it grabs someone's attention immediately, then I think you're already in with a shot, you know.
Yeah, makes sense. Kaden, do you want to talk? I don't know if you want to talk more about Toothsucker and Royal Road and when you have that in mind.
Yeah. So as far as the book stands, my editor Sarah is going through it right now. She's planning to turn it around to me at the end of February, and the way that I am releasing it, it'll start going out in March. And just with how Royal Road works, for people that aren't familiar with it, it is usually released chapter by chapter. And to kind of hit on what's called the Rising Stars, just the front and featured, I'm going to release the first 20,000 words of it, which is about the first fourth. And then following days, I'll do chapter and chapter. Eventually, because I'm much more focused on Paladins, I'll probably do a chapter a week when it comes to book 2. But the way that is going, I will leave book 1 on there for the next little while, for the foreseeable future. And I will have the ebook available on Amazon, but not Kindle Unlimited, just because of the legal matters there. But as soon as Toothsucker is completed on Royal Road, I will publish it to Amazon, because I think that a lot more people read it there where they can buy the physical book. But the idea is to draw in early readers that want it and the Royal Road audience. It's just a different tactic I'm trying to see if we can go there, because there are progression elements. But at its core, it is a cyberpunk thriller with subtle romance, lots of my anger towards the messed up immigration system and big pharma thrown in there. And I think that's one of the cool things about sci-fi and cyberpunk, is you can make a lot of social criticisms with technology and the way things are. But I think people like it because it has plenty of action, a lot of weirdness. Like I said, cyborg dolphins, a lot of science in dolphins goes into this. But I don't want to say that I'm just trying to sell out, but noticing that romance is a huge genre. Just putting that kind of in there. A lot of that I did for my wife because she loves romance in her books. And that is one of the best things I loved, the romance in Cyberpunk Edge Runners. And so I'm just trying a lot of weird things with it. But yeah, book is going to be out this spring. For people that don't want it on Royal Road, you'll be able to get the paperback probably April or so. And I am going to organize the cover reveal simultaneously with the 20K on Royal Road, so that right as people see the cover, they can go read the first fourth of the book right away, and then just day after day it'll come out.
Pretty cool.
Kaden, I do have to say, I'm excited for you and I to form our own group within the break-ins of titles that are noun verber, where
yes, I love that.
yeah, we're the noun verbers now.
Exactly.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, but Rob, I actually want to give you a moment to talk about your not noun verb book.
Oh yeah.
Because but Rob and Isaac, you both also had a release fairly recently. You want to tell us a little bit about that, starting with Rob?
Yeah, so I recently released a novella called Performances of a Death Metal Bard. It's based off of a D&D character that I had a long time ago. His name is Ozymandias, or Mandy for short, but he's a bard that only plays death metal. So he comes across this blood red lute that whispers to him and demands vengeance on somebody. And so they kick off an adventure of vengeance and mayhem. And it's inspired a lot by death metal and by tabletop RPGs. I usually try and market it as a mix of The Witcher and Metalocalypse with like a little bit of Scott Pilgrim in there. So
love it. And I believe that you recently got a quote that's going to be on the front cover here soon.
I did. So I'm relaunching the cover with a quote from Michael R. Fletcher on it. I'm really excited about that. He was like one of the first people that I like sent the physical arc to, and he said that he enjoyed it, which is great.
Yeah. I don't know if you're in his Discord, by the way. He's kind of fun on his Discord. He said the other day, he's like, crap, I gotta write this big. Yeah, he's got his own Discord. He said, crap, I've got to write a big battle scene with like armies and stuff, and like I've always shied away from that. And like, oh, and I was like, oh man, your day of work sounds so bad. He had a good laugh, I was like, yeah, he's a good guy. I'm glad that he got that quote. Obviously, he's got a little bit of cred in the industry too. I think that's a nice thing for you.
Yeah, thank you.
And Isaac, I think you had another book with no dragons, huh?
Oh, that was a perfect introduction. So thank you, Josh. I appreciate the support. So that's Grey's Demise, and so that's a book about my main character in book 1, and it is the answer to the question, how did Dre, who is a prince, end up in a legion of criminals? And so that novella was the answer to that question, because someone asked me once, and I didn't have an answer, so I had to write a book about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that. So is that, and that one is like an optional entry point, right?
Yeah.
I tried to do that with my novella too, like where it could either be read as like a book 0 or as a book 1.5, which I think is really cool, but also it is not the easiest thing to pull off, right? Because you want to have like some information in there where like if someone's read it before, forgot about Dre.
Oh, Sam, that was gold.
Oh, Sam.
His next novella is Still Dre.
Still Dre. Yeah.
Still Dre.
But no, it's tough to like put in stuff that's interesting, and then if you've read the novella before, when you read the novel, you're like, oh, but then not need it to make the novel make sense, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I think another novella that does that well is Brian's novella Princess of Old Deer. That does a really good job of like adding just a little bit extra texture to the main series, even though you don't necessarily need it. It's not required reading.
I read that one too. And that was a fun ride. I like that novella also. Yeah. Nice.
That one's got some really positive ratings, actually. I'm keen to read it this year.
It's very good.
Cool. So should we just shout out more Breaking books? Like what? What have you guys read recently that's not a Breaking book? Actually, you've read and enjoyed that's not a Breaking book.
Well, I shouted out Stu Pipe before, but the other one that actually there's two. One of them is Aaron Hall, who was in the chat before. His book, The Legend of R, is so good, man. It's like legit one of the best like comedic fantasies I've read since Pratchett. It's so good. So I hope everyone reads that. Genuinely, it's really funny.
I've started it, and it's good. And also, the audiobook is done by
great.
Adriel Brandt, who does my books.
Yeah,
and it's awesome.
Great narrator. Have you got up to Sandy Brambleton yet?
No.
All right, cool. I'm not going to say anything. You'll love it. So yeah, I've read that, and the other one that I read recently, which is another indie that I've just been floored by, was Earthbound by Katie Stein. That's a fantastic book.
It's on my radar.
Fantastic book. And like I think she's doing something really clever with that, because it's going to be a duology with planned like other books in the world. So she's going to be able to capture a full audience for a finished series in less than 2 years turnaround. And the first book is just so strong. So yeah,
a lot of like amazing character tension there. Just
incredible.
Like some of the ways that like I've like kind of pitched it to people, like I really want my wife to read it, is like you think about like the Jedi vows of celibacy and things like that, and like to their order, and you just kind of implement it in there, and it's kind of like Dune, Attack on Titan, just a mix of like it's like a space like sci fantasy, super good.
It's got space opera vibes, but it also like feels like epic fantasy mixed with some real world tech, which is really interesting. And I think the other thing that she just nailed in that book is that it's kind of like true romantasy in the sense that it's not just written for the sake of like spice, which is, again, there's nothing wrong with that if that's what you like, but it really does explore like the interactions between the characters on such a like fundamental, deep level, which I think is like one of the only ones that I've read really in recent history that's done that well. So
yeah. I recently started. I recently started what's it called? Umbra by Amber Toro. It's just freshly like cracked the book open. Only a few chapters in so far, but it's my February like Valentine's Day read. I'm really excited to like crack into it. I know a lot of people have spoken very highly of it, and I'm interested. Like right now, you're kind of like learning how the world works. Which is some of my favorite parts of like reading sci-fi and fantasy books. So I'm excited to get a little bit deeper into it and to see how the characters like get along or don't get along.
Nice. Isaac?
So I am a KU subscriber, and so when I'm not reading a Break-Ins book or something nonfiction, I just go and find the most interesting space or sci-fi or anything else that's like on the top lists. And so most recently I've been burning through Alpha Strike, The Last Hunter series. I'm like 3 books in, and it's about ships that are made out of asteroids, and there's like drones attacking the world, and it's by 2 indie authors, and burning through them. It's just been fun. Yeah. And before that, it was like Mario. Oh, what was his name? Mario K, something like that. And it was kind of a Starship Troopers type book. That was really fun. Yeah.
Holy cow, dude! There's 16 books in that Alpha Strike series.
Yeah. And so I'll just
strap in.
Like
that's awesome.
Read it until Yeah. It gets really fun. Yeah.
That's cool. I dig these covers. Look at that. Let's see if we can.
No,
that looks terrible, but whatever. The cover is
cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Nice.
Mario Clues. That's his name.
I get so. My cousin reads a ton of audiobooks, and he's kind of into the lit RPG progression fantasy. There's one title in there that started on Royal Road that's one of the biggest like in that space. So I wanted to check it out. Like the title is He Who Fights with Monsters. For a long time, I thought that title was complete trash, but then I understand it's a niche quote, and I'm like, okay, I get it. But it took a little bit to hook me, but once I really got invested with the characters, it kept me going. So I've like plowed through 6 books in that series pretty quick, and then I was like, I'm gonna take a break because I wanna. When I get like really into a book, I like everything else is secondary, like, which is a problem sometimes. So I was like, I need to take a break before I get to book 7,
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's a fun little ride, I feel like we probably need to wrap up soon, but someone was talking about romance a little bit, and so I'm going to open a can of worms that we may not even be able to finish now, but I feel like almost all romance stories are about like the beginning of a relationship, right? How do you write an interesting romance story that is about like 20 years into a healthy relationship? What does that look like? Anyone have any thoughts? Because I really think I feel like the world needs more of that. There's so much like romanticizing of the beginning of relationships, but there's like very little of like making a long-term healthy relationship cool. I know that Mary Robinette Kowal always has like long-term committed relationships in her books, and I should like look in more of how she does it. She says that one thing that she kind of focuses on is making the relationship itself a character, and I love that idea. But would love to think, like what you're just kind of like knee-jerk thoughts if you think of this concept are in a lightning round. Go, anyone?
You go, Kaden.
A great book that really explores this. Because I feel like I'm in a very healthy, good marriage, and that's something that I like to see there. Because a lot of times you have just like a disloyal spouse, or like just you don't have a lot of good relationships that are
Yeah.
well established. And Threadlight by Zach Gargile is one of my favorite indie series, and it follows that. They're a younger married couple that have a kid, and that honestly really just sends that is the beginning of the conflict, the nature with that child. But like that's something I've tried to explore in my books. I have a younger slow burn between two characters in Elegy. If you look at Fenmir and his wife, I've honestly modeled it a lot after my parents, because I've only been married for a little under 3 years, and I tried to make a couple that'd been married for 20 or so years, and I really look up to them and their example, and so I just tried to put it in like that. And I think exactly like what you said is just like making it a character itself, taking examples from fiction and real life, seeing what really makes a relationship click. And I mean, I'm not the best to speak because I'm really young and inexperienced in that, but that's kind of my approach to it.
Makes sense.
To tack on to that, like this is a bit of a cop-out answer probably, but one of the stories that I was thinking of that I think it's still kind of tiptoes around the outside of what you are asking for, Nick, but it gets closer, I think, which is The Notebook. Just because The Notebook has this ability, everyone knows the story, I think, but it's got this ability to tell the story of the past through the story of the present, and the story of the present is ultimately what dominates, like, the point of the story, right? Because that couple's been together for so long. So that's one of those rare instances, I think, where it's done really well, because it uses a sense of reflection, or a sense of reflectiveness, I guess, to get to the point of it. But I can't think of many others that really do that middle period of a relationship well. Yeah.
When you think about it, if you subscribe to Brandon Sanderson's theory of story, all of the kind of the central points of the story are focused around conflict. So if you're asking, why do we not have more of them? Maybe it's because if there's no conflict, there's no story.
What's the point? That's one of the things with like cozy fantasy that I think as well. Again, I don't want to get into it completely, but cozy fantasy has this problem sometimes where, because the stakes are so low, there is ultimately no story. So you can read the story and enjoy it for what it is, but oftentimes people will kind of come away from it and then say, "Oh, I don't know whether I'd read it again," or maybe it leaves your mind too fast just because there was nothing really to hold on to. And it's a similar issue,
Yeah, I think you're onto something there, Isaac, with the whole like people in like when they're consuming media, whether they're reading or watching a TV show or something, they want to see conflict, because without the conflict, there's no resolution. Like there's no, they don't see a progression. That's why you get like the Ross and Rachel stuff, or like when Han Solo and Leia, when Leia says "I love you" and then Han says "I know," then he gets frozen, and like they're kept apart for 3 in movie and in real life years. So it's difficult, but it doesn't necessarily mean that like there's not a way to do it. Like you can see them. Yeah, sorry.
You just jogged my memory on A Quiet Place. Has anyone seen A Quiet Place?
Oh yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So that's basically summarizing what you're getting at, Rob, I think, which is like,
I think that to the way to portray like a healthy like relationship that's like a little further in is you can throw a lot of things at them, but you have to really like solidify the way that they tackle it together, like as a unit, which also brings it back to what Nicholas was saying about the relationship kind of being a character. Like they may have like their own reactions to something, they may have their own like thoughts going through their head when something is thrown at them, but it's how they tackle it as a unit together instead of as individuals that like really sells the strength of that bond, no matter if they've been together for like 2 months or 20 years. So yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah, I guess it's a good point and good take. Well, I think we about need to wrap up. So let's go around and everyone can share quickly where people can find and follow you online. How about we start with Isaac and then Josh and then Kaden and then Rob?
Yep. Dragons, and I know it's at IsaacHillAuthor.com, at IsaacHillAuthor on all social media.
I hate dragons.com. That's
You should register that.
I should.
Yeah, that's great. Mine is just JoshuaWalkerAuthor.com, and on all socials, I'm at Joshua Walker AU.
Go.
My name is there. KadenRLove.com. Or you can find me on social media at Kaden Love Author. Or more people might know me from at Spetling Press on Instagram. That's where I post book content.
People can find me at RobLeighAuthor.com. I'm Rob Leigh Author on Instagram, and then probably Rob Writer on Twitter.
Nice. And I'm at NicholasWFuller.com, and you can get all my links to all my socials there on the bottom of the website. And yeah, I think that's going to wrap us up for tonight. Thanks everyone for watching. Thanks you four for being here. I've had a lovely time chatting with you all.
And one more round of congratulations for our 2 new releases as well.
Yes.
Thank you.
Everyone,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congrats, gentlemen.
Go get, there's still a couple signed copies of Josh's latest, and you can still back Kaden's Kickstarter. Go do it.